Beyond the Sun. This is your review for 2. Good day, my name is Joe Gerba. Today I'll be going over Beyond the Sun and how it plays with 2 players. Now, Beyond the Sun is a 2 to 4 player game. It's essentially a worker placement where you'll be discovering technologies and taking control of planets and colonizing different planets while trying to get some of these achievements. Once 3 achievements have been placed on these 4 cards down here, the game's over and whoever has the most points wins the game. Now let's see a little bit more how to play. So in essence, this game is going to be a worker placement. You're going to have your one action you're going to do on your turn. You're going to do that action. You may have to pay ore, you may have to pay people. And you do the action where your pawn's at. And then at the end of your turn, you choose either population growth, or resource trading. And that's a pretty important decision, whether you need more people in your pool or you want ore for something you're going to do next round. And it can really be a big decision at the end of your turn. What are we trying to produce? Now you produce more by getting these discs out. Now you can either get the food discs out or the ore discs out by either automating, which are some of the cards up here, or some of the planets may have it, where you get to put one of your chips up here for the rest of the game, and therefore opening up some of these tracks so you can do more during the production phase. So you're either trying to automate or just taking control of a system, having more spaceship points than the other person. You get to put one of your discs out there. Now if you colonize one of these systems, you get to put 2 of your discs on there, and it can never be taken by the other person, and then you kind of refill the deck. So it's kind of an interesting little resource where it's just ore and people, but you want to try to get some of these discs out there so at the end of your turn you can produce more. Now that was kind of the tracks over here. Then we go into the technology board, and this is where the meat of the game is. Deciding, you have your basic spacefaring actions you can go to really get your level 1s technologies started up, and maybe some level 2s. But really your level 2s are going to be your advanced actions, getting bigger spaceships on the board, being able to automate, getting extra ore on your turn, or being able to do 2 actions. But it costs you usually a person, and when that person's out there, they're out there for the rest of the game. So you really want to make sure that you have enough population growth and ore growth. So once you own, because you're not allowed to place your pawn on the action space unless you've researched that technology. So, and then when you're researching a new technology, you'll reveal this event. You'll get to choose one of 2 technologies that match the previous technology's color, and you get to choose which technology is going to be there. So you're the first one that gets to discover. You may get an immediate action, or you may have a new action space opened up to just you until someone else may join you researching that technology. So this part's really neat, with a little bit of area control over here to try to get some discs out. That's the main portion of the game. You're really trying to keep in mind of these achievements as well. There's going to be 4 achievements every game. Once 3 discs are placed, the end of the game kind of triggers. And you're going to get points from technologies, from colonization, from having the most ships, to having some of these event cards. There's a ton of way of getting points in this game. No matter what you do, you're going to be accumulating points, which I really like in games. And it's just a whole lot of fun. And, like I said, as far as the gameplay, you pick up your pawn, you put it somewhere, you do that action, you choose what production you want, and it's the next person's turn. So after that, let's see a little bit more what I thought about the game. So let's talk about the components in this game. I really like the components. It's interesting. Every faction is exactly the same as far as what they get. Everybody's just getting a whole bunch of dice. Now these dice have 4 sides that have spaceships, one side that has a supply, and one side that has a person or a human on it. So it's pretty basic as far as what you get, but I really like it because all of that stuff's on the same dice. You're all going to get the same discs, all going to start off with the same basic things. However, each board is going to have its own, starting in its own little faction board at the beginning. And I think that's kind of neat, just a little variable start. Not only that, you're going to have two of the same achievements will be the same at the end of the game, and two are going to be different every game. Now let's go into the rules. The rules are pretty straightforward. If you've played any worker placement, it'll probably come to you pretty quickly. You know, you can't go to the same place twice in a row unless there's an open spot right beside it. But most of the time you're going to be picking up your pawn, putting it somewhere, and then just doing that action. Now it gets a little bit more complicated when you're trying to discover some of these new technologies. When you discover new technology, you get to look at, you know, an event card that's going to come up, and then choose between two technologies that correspond with the previous technology. So you're kind of upgrading, kind of seeing, but it's a pretty straightforward game. The rules are explained pretty well, pretty dry rules, but you don't always need the most, you know, complex rules, you know, in the game, but they give you some pretty good examples and some game flow. And overall, I think this game flows pretty well. Let's talk about the table size for a minute. This is the odd part about this game, is this game does take up quite a bit of room. You could barely fit this on a 3x3 with two people, but you want some more space. There's a lot of stuff going on. And one of the big gripes I do have about this game that I'll talk about now is it's hard to see everything. We've had to put our basic spacefaring action, which should go on the side of the board. We've had to put it right where both of us can kind of see it and get to it, because we'll be going here a lot during the early part of the game. Now the rest of the game, you really want to see what actions are available, but this board's pretty big and you really have to lean over the table to see a lot of these actions. And then on top of that, you have an auxiliary board to the side with different planets. Now there's just no way to kind of see everything without picking up the card, you know, looking at it and having to put it back down and remembering that's what that card does. So as far as the table space, this is kind of a table hog and kind of tough to see what a lot of these cards do intuitively. But as far as the table space, it does take up a decent sized table, and it looks pretty decent on the table, but it's gonna take up some room and gonna be kind of hard to see and position yourself to see all the cards and actions available. Now, for me, the gameplay is pretty fun. I like worker placement, I like resource management, and it's interesting because you don't have a whole lot of resources to manage. You really just have ore and you have people. Now, your people will be forever on these technologies once you put them out there, but once you put them on the ships and either colonize or get pushed out back to deep space and then try to go somewhere else and you colonize, they come back to your board. So it's kind of like you know, a rotation between your board and the planetary board, but then you have permanent spots that you have to claim with your people out there, all while paying ore for a lot of the actions you're going to do throughout the game. So it's kind of neat, you know, it's a really tight mechanic on what you're going to spend things on. I like the worker placement. I love technology trees, so I like seeing these new technologies, because when you're the first to discover it, you get a little event, which really isn't that big of a deal for most of the part, but when you get to choose between two technologies, you're the first one that gets to go there. So you're like exploring a whole, you know, branch out of this. And if the person doesn't have the prerequisites, they may not be able to go there for a couple turns. And that's kind of neat, where you kind of own like a certain part of the board just for a couple turns. And if the opponent never goes there, you'll get to kind of own that part for the rest of the game. Now they may do the same to you somewhere else, and you have to decide, do I want to follow them there, or do I want to be the, you know, the frontier man trying to discover what's coming up next? When I want to choose what's coming down the pipeline. So I really like that about this game. And then there's this area control. Some people may not like the tacked on area control, but I feel like this is a main part of the game instead of just part of the sideboard. You need to control the colonies to get your discs out there to automate your production. You need to eventually try to colonize these by just having enough power on there and having the right action open, and that helps you get discs off as well as brings people and is victory points at the end of the game. So it's a good source of victory points at the end of the game. Now there's just a lot to think about. You can control some planets that may not give you too much, or you can control the shipyard so your new ships can go there while all trying to, you know, put these discs and kind of control. It's a really neat place that it's not really a tacked on, it's almost a secondary portion of the game. You know, even though it's a smaller board, it's a crucial part of the game to be able to do that. So you have the technology side and you have the area control side, and the dichotomy of both is just awesome and plays really well with each other. Now let's talk about the replayability a little bit. Replayability to me is fairly high. To some may not be as high because you're going to be playing the same game for the most part over and over. Like I said, you're going to get 2 different achievements that you want to hit at the end of the game, and 2 will always be the same. Your starting boards will most likely be the same-ish for the most part, with a little bit of setup. And the expert size has a couple things throughout the game that may enhance the gameplay, may add a little bit of spice to the gameplay. But the gameplay as a whole isn't going to change too much from gameplay to gameplay. You're going to be revealing technologies, and there's a decent amount of technologies to get revealed from each category, but you're going to see some of the same ones over and over. A lot of these events are going to be standard throughout the game, and you're going to have some mixed in some of the time. Same thing with the planets. The gameplay is always going to be the same, but there's going to be the replayability in which things come up in which order, or which path you may want to take due to some of the level 2 technologies that you see coming through. So replayability to me is high, but to some it's really going to be playing the same game over with a little bit of reskin from some of the different cards you may see and some of the different planets themselves. Let's talk about gameplay real quick. I think I did play this game with 3 people. It took us about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. And I played this game several times with my wife, and each time it took us about an hour and a half. And I thought that was just a nice time period for this game. You felt like you could get to the level 3s and you could really push it to the level 4 technologies, but at the same time you really had to keep in mind some of these achievements. So hour and a half is probably what you can count on for 2 players in this game. So is this game good for 2? And man, I really do like this game for 2. I know it's kind of boring on the surface, another worker placement, but just the technologies, being able to drive some of the the decisions along the way, really think, do I want to, just own a planet, or do I want to have it, or do I want to colonize it? How's my resource doing? Can I automate anything throughout the board? Do I want to follow that person or be the pioneer and the first person to get some of these technologies? There's a lot of thought throughout the game, and really on your turn, it's really just worker placement. You get one action to do something. You're always going to feel like you're doing, something throughout the game, and then at the end of your turn, you get to choose which production you want. You want people or a resource trade. It's just a nice flowing game. I really like this game for 2. Plays pretty quick. There's a different board on 3 to 4 players. 3 to 4, you can kind of forget what you're going to be doing on your turn. With 2, there's little downtime, and it can get a little bit of, a little bit feisty around the area control part of the board and even the technology board. But man, is it a lot of fun. Is this the greatest game out there? No, but it is a great worker placement game, especially for, a kind of different theme. You get this space theme with, just a couple resources, like I said, ore and people. Technology kind of driven and a little bit of area control. So is it the best game I've ever played? No, but man, I really do like this game because I think it's pretty straightforward, interesting, can change it up just enough throughout this game, and easy to kind of get to the table once you've played a few times. So I don't have too much more to say without rambling on, but I do like this game. I think it has just enough variability for me to know what I'm going to get when I put this on the table. Like I said, it's not going to be a totally different gameplay every time, but there's going to be variability between the plays. So I really like this game for 2. I like being able to see what the other person is doing, what I'm doing differently, try to get different achievements than them, or try to follow them or pioneer the technologies. But I think this game is really a lot of fun for 2. Maybe not for everyone, maybe a little bit dry for those who want to spice it up, but for a straightforward worker placement, this game is probably for you. So that was my review for Beyond the Sun, and until next time.